Welcome back to Republican Roundtable. I'm Max Reimer, your host, and we are covering elections as of late, and we have a local candidate who is running for House District 63B, friend of the show, Frank Pafko.
Thank you, Max.
Frank, thank you for joining us today on the Republican Roundtable. Where is 63B?
63B is the eastern 4 precincts of Richfield, pretty much from Lyndale Avenue to Cedar and from 73rd Diagonal Boulevard North.
Okay.
It does take in three corners of Lyndale Avenue and 66th. So we got that little corner up there by Richfield Lake and up into 35W and the Crosstown.
So for those who don't know Frank Pafko, who are you? What's your background? Why are you running for this seat?
I've lived in this district, either South Minneapolis or Richfield, for more than 60 years.
Okay.
I grew up, graduated from Roosevelt High School, graduated the University of Minnesota and worked for the state of Minnesota for 36 years, 34 of those for the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Started out as a seasonal laborer and retired as Chief Environmental Officer, Director of the Office of the Environmental Office for MnDOT. So I've got a lot of governmental experience. I've been active in politics in Richfield and in South Minneapolis. 63B also goes into South Minneapolis. I've got the airport, Fort Snelling, the VA hospital, up to Lake Nokomis and just south of Minnehaha Parkway.
Okay. So 63B, why this seat and why run for it now, Frank?
Why I want to run is better government. I've spent my career in government. I know how you can run government well, and what I have seen is that on all levels, government has been failing the citizens of Minnesota. In particular, over the last 8 years, we have had so many failures of government. Right now, we're on the 1-year anniversary of the rollout of MNLARS, which is the Minnesota Licensing and Registration System for vehicles. It's been a mess. Titles have taken months. The clerks over at Richfield City Hall just have to work overtime in order to get these things done. That has been a mismanagement failure of government. Before that, it was the MNsure rollout. That has been a failure. Higher premiums. People couldn't get on the system who wanted to. Still not sure after 4 years if the system is still working as optimum as they promised. That was failures of state government. It goes back to the early days of the Dayton administration. Viking Stadium was supposed the state share was supposed to be paid for by proceeds from electronic pull tabs. It's on our property taxes now because that failed. Then we had the DFL appointed Viking Commission who were using their suites for their own personal enjoyment instead of generating revenue to help pay off that system. And we're coming now into the failure of elder care to investigate elder care abuse. We had the veto of the tax conformity bill, which accountants and I think business owners know about it now, but the individual taxpayers are going to know how bad it is once they start to prepare their 2018 taxes. And even when we get a new governor and a new legislature, there's not going to be enough time to fix it before you have to start filing those returns. It's going to be a mess.
That's right. And to that end, conformity is so important because those SALT deductions, some of your property tax deductions, they're going to be outrageous. You are going to feel the full sting of a Minnesota tax burden.
Absolutely. I'm in that area where I don't know if I'm still going to be able to itemize or take. It's definitely going to be to my advantage to take the federal.
Yes.
But I need to itemize in order to keep state from hammering me, and I don't know how that's going to turn out.
That's right. So you being in government for as long as you have been and seeing some of the inefficiencies within the system in and of itself, Frank, how do you make a difference as one member of a much larger house?
I've shown that I can work across the aisle. I can work with both sides to accomplish. I spent 4 years as North Area Manager for the Minnesota Department of Transportation, developing highway projects in Ramsey and Anoka County. I went from ultra-conservative Phil Krinke to ultra-liberal Alice Hausman, and I dealt with all of them. I was able to develop projects, give service the information that they needed. Working in the Office of Environmental Services, I accomplished a lot of things, but just before I retired, I was recognized by Governor Dayton. Me and my team got an award for collaboration in governmental efficiency, working with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources to streamline the permitting process for bridge and culvert replacements over streams, and to be able to turn that in from a very expensive, time-consuming effort that every city, county, township had to deal with, to a general permit system that was clean, that had standard mitigation measures that didn't have to be redesigned every time. And the system can work if you sit down and work through it, and dealing with regulations. That was my main job for 34 years, was trying to figure how to get highway projects through the environmental permit regulatory process, and I was very successful at that.
It strikes me, we just came up on the anniversary of the I-35W bridge collapse, and you were working for MnDOT at the time when that happened,
I
correct?
was Chief Environmental Officer, yes.
Recall that scenario. What was that like?
It's a shock. I mean, I came home, wasn't paying attention. My cousin calls me. My daughter was at the university in that era, and I would pick her up or drop her off on my way to and from work. Went across that bridge almost on a daily basis. It was my commute route when I worked those 4 years for Metro. My cousin called me and said, "Are you all right?" "Yeah." "Melanie, all right?" "Yeah." "Turn on the TV." "What?" "No, turn on the TV." And you turn it on, and bridges are not supposed to fall down. You stare at it. You're in shock. You go in the next morning to work, and our Metro district had performed in 12 hours. They turned Highway 280 into a freeway and the major detour route for 150,000 vehicles a day. But the one thing that really strikes me is that morning, where people in the central office, without being told, kind of just said, "We're going to have to replace that bridge. What do I have to do to get a new bridge done?" And they just started doing it.
Government became efficient.
Government became efficient. I am incredibly proud of the team I had in the Office of Environmental Stewardship. We've just had the 1-year anniversary of opening of the St. Croix River Bridge. I worked on that for 30 years to get it through the environmental system, through 2 lawsuits, a couple of EIS processes. We did the same process, not full EIS, we did the same process for the new 35W bridge in 9 days. We were able
Let's just take that in. 30 years versus 9 days, and at very least a similar process.
It was the same process, but we had built relationships with the regulatory agencies. There are emergency procedures in all federal regulations, like in the historic review process, which is called Section 106. Normally, you give the state historic officer 30 days. In an emergency, they have to turn it around in 7. SHPO turned around the approval for us, I think, in 18 hours. That's how government can come together and work efficiently. You're not going to do that on every project. You're not going to do 9 days, but it doesn't have to take 30 years.
And it doesn't have to take, in the case of Minlars, like we covered before, it doesn't need to take $100 million over 10 years either.
Right. No.
So
It can be done much more efficiently. I've had 34 years of dealing with that. I've been retired now for 6 years. I've observed it from afar, and we can deliver better government.
So Frank, fast forwarding now to your campaign, what other issues are you bringing to the table?
My expertise is transportation and the environment. That was my career. I know how to get projects through. I also know what's an efficient project, what's a cost-effective project, and what isn't. I am not a fan of light rail transit, spending $2 billion at $140 million a mile to deliver a train that goes from point A to point B and back again, versus being able to add lanes to an existing freeway at $10 million a mile, or build a new freeway like 610 at $50 million a mile, is much more effective for more people. We can build bus rapid transit, not on separate alignments, but on min-pass lanes, on arterials like the one on Snelling Avenue. Those are cost-effective ways to provide transit, rather than these boondoggles that are more designed to create profit for the landowners along them than to actually provide a transportation alternative. Environment, I spent my time at MnDOT trying to find ways to fit infrastructure projects into the environment, and if possible, leave the environment better than when we started. I worked on the wetland banking system before it was required by any state or federal regulations, and we've replaced hundreds, if not thousands, of acres of wetlands in Minnesota for the highway system. It's been utilized by both townships and counties as well as MnDOT. I'm also very passionate about the education. Again, this is all better government. I'm passionate about the education system. I was in school 50 years ago. Minneapolis school system was pretty good. I've got 2 children. They're 11 and a half years apart. I have 2 only children. For my son, who's now in his mid-40s, that wasn't a bad, the school system was still pretty good. My daughter, who is in her early 30s, it went downhill tremendously. And now my grandchildren are entering school and work very hard to make sure they're in a good charter school system, because the existing regular public school system is not serving them. Test scores, graduation rates have declined tremendously over these last 50 years, and we have to do something different. The experiment has been done. We have thrown money at the problem, and it has failed tremendously. The charter school system seems to be working well. I think we have to give students the choice of what schools they go to, because we cannot force them to keep going to failing schools.
Absolutely. Frank, how can people get in touch with you and find out a little bit more about your campaign?
Well, they can contact me. My email is pafko4@gmail.com. My website is pafkoforhouse.com. And my handle is what I've been doing for the last 6 years, which has been commenting on, or last 5 years, commenting on transportation issues for the Up and Adam radio show and podcast. My Twitter handle is @Transazar, TRANS, capital TSAR.
Very good. Frank Pafko, thank you so much for joining the Republican Roundtable.
Thanks, Max. Been a pleasure.
Good to see you. Thank you all for joining us on the Republican Roundtable. I'm Max Reimer. Until next time.